Accountability is a contact sport. Accountability is taken, not given. Clear versus unclear. Accountability is the act of clarity. Jen Long is a phenomenal human being, and she really unpacks what drama-free accountability is. This conversation will leave you on the edge of your seat. It's going to really challenge who you think you are, how you've looked at, viewed accountability, how you've thrown the word around, and how things could shift when you understand what Jen shares. She actually takes us on a 6-step process to test what we think we know and unpack what we don't know. Accountability expert Jennifer Long takes us on a journey that will shift the way you think of the word accountability from this day forward. I promise you this is tremendously magical. And to acknowledge our show sponsor, Turmeric. I've talked about Turmeric wholeheartedly for a long period of time. It has really helped boost my immune system, support my recovery time, reduce inflammation, and overall, I feel fantastic. So thank you, Turmeric. Link will be in the show notes. Use code PEOPLEFIRST, all capitals. Save yourself a few bucks, free delivery. Turmeric has provided me a new perspective on how I feel, and shame on me for not sharing it with you. So thanks for being here. Tune in because Jen is going to take us on a really exciting ride. Jen, welcome to the show. Tremendously excited. I'm full of energy, truthfully, because, it's the pivotal moments of even connecting before we push the record button. We're dealing with shit like that we've never experienced before, where the technology's not working, and like you're here, you're not here, I'm here, not here, and get echoes, and it's just setting the expectations and boundaries of there is no boundaries. We're gonna have a phenomenal conversation today. It's going to be what it's going to be. It's going to go where it's going to go, and our audience is in for something spectacular, something special, right? I love some of the things that I've learned about you as I've done some digging and learning, and I'm a huge advocate about accountability in life, accountability with our children, accountability with our athletes, accountability with our professionals out there, and there is so much to talk about. So first of all, welcome. Thanks for making time out of your day to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm super excited as well.
So we're talking about accountability. Before we get into that today, okay. I got to ask you a tremendously, I call them fun questions. I have some other people in my lives who are out there listening to this that are going to roll their eyes and smash their forehead when they hear these questions. But I like to ask unorthodox, creative questions, and it really, it does a few things. It sets the context. It connects us. It makes us laugh a little bit. So, buckle up. Ready for this one?
I'm buckled up. Let's go.
All right, you're in a board. Here's the context. You're in a boardroom. I'm just saying a boardroom, but you're in a boardroom, and you're having like a real in-depth conversation about something that's tremendously important to the other human beings that are present with you. And out of nowhere, door swings open. An ostrich walks in with a sombrero on his head, looks around the room and said, "What's up, everybody? What is he there for?"
The talking ostrich? Oh my God. My immediate reaction is he's here to sell me car insurance, right? Because that's the visual I have, is that guy from Liberty Mutual who talks to the ostrich the whole time. Or is that an emu? Well, I guess it's an emu. It's not really an ostrich. So that's my first reaction is, oh God, who's here to sell us insurance? But yeah, maybe he's there to talk about what it means to be flightless.
There we go. See, folks, this is the thing. Like, Jen, thanks. This is it, folks. No two human brains are alike. We all think differently. I would have never pivoted that. I would have never thought of that. Jen, thanks for bringing me into that. Right? Holy shit! Now my philosophy of that question will be forever changed. So thank you. Thank you.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome.
Look, this is what's important in life, right? The lightheartedness that we forget to laugh at times, and so I love that. And now, look, there is so much about you. There's a ton of shit there. Today we're talking about accountability without the drama, and I'm so curious. I want to pivot into that. And before we get to that, burning question, like unpack this succinctly. Accountability expert. What the hell? Fill
What
me
the hell
in.
is that?
Share it with the world. Sounds
Yeah,
magical. Tell me. How do you
yeah.
define that?
Well, so because accountability is so fundamental, right?
Yeah.
It's fundamental to how we engage with each other. It's like foundational to a good relationship. Doesn't matter if it's a work relationship, intimate relationship, friendship, any of that. The accountability is an agreement, right? That we just have, and that's what makes it work or not work. And to be an expert in that, I think, gives you a little bit of an edge about understanding relationship, right? How to manage relationship, build relationship. So I would say an accountability expert is a relationship expert. I would say that if you're an accountability expert, you're also somebody that sees accountability for what it is, which is a practice, not an outcome. And that
Mm.
it's about a willingness to look at yourself first, right? Because accountability always starts with you, and if you're not looking at yourself before you're looking at everybody else, you're not doing it right. So those are the things that I would tell you if you're an expert. Those are the things you're good at.
Okay, so I'm curious. Like, tell me more. What do you mean by that? If you're not willing to look at yourself, say that to me again.
Well, we tend to in because like so rule number one, people fail. People screw up. We are
Yeah.
imperfect as people, and so how we respond in those moments matters. And a lot of times in a moment of failure or in a moment of disappointment, in a moment of frustration, we tend to want to self-protect. We tend to want to
Mm.
make it not us, and we tend to want to make it someone else, and we tend to, and that's human, right? It doesn't make you a bad person. It's just how we tend to respond. But when you understand that you've always got to look at how you're showing up first, and this goes to the whole notion of how I think about accountability, because accountability is confused in the culture with consequences, with discipline, and with punishment. And it's not the same thing. It's not an outcome. And discipline is an outcome, and consequences are an outcome. And those are part of accountability in terms of a practice. You can't have accountability without consequence. But if you're good at practicing accountability, which means ownership, responsibility, and clarity, that's you don't get to consequence and discipline on the level of frequency that I think people think happen, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Here's something that surfaces in my head, and let's talk construction for a moment in time. I mean, I say construction could be any sort of thing. Something happens, right? Life is you know, so what? This happened. Our brains put meaning to that, and whatever else happens, but something occurs, right? And I love
Yeah,
what you say is, what do we do as human beings? We self-protect. Well,
yeah,
fuck, it's not my fault. Who's accountable? We throw this word around. Who's accountable? Who's ever accountable is gonna, you know, pay for this, right? And
right,
the way you just defined accountability, it's not the outcome,
right,
right?
right. Accountability is an act of clarity. Like, let's get clear. Let's get clear on what I was expecting. And I think part of the issue around accountability that people suffer from is they don't set a good expectation to begin with, or they've got unstated expectations. I'm expecting you to behave in a way, or I'm expecting you to do something, and I haven't really said outright that I'm expecting that, right? There's this, they should just know how to do the job. That's just how it
Right.
works.
I did it this way. They should know how to do it this way.
Right? Yeah, and you can't always rely on that. People aren't raised the same. They don't come from the same culture. I mean, there's a lot of miscommunication around that sort of stuff because I think managers sometimes just assume, right, that you should know. You've been here long enough.
Yeah. And there it is, like unspoken expectations lead to predetermined resentments. Like, holy shit, Jen, you should have known. Well, I don't know, Jonathan. If I didn't, did you ever communicate that? Did you? I love what you're talking about, right? It's the accountability. It's like stand up on the mirror, folks, and say, did I? Could I? You know. So
Right.
beautiful, beautiful. This is instrumental. Accountability is like a word that is thrown around like a ping pong ball, right? Who's
Yes.
accountable? All right. Oh, there's is the word punitive? I think that's the word they attach to. It's like, oh, there's going to be
Yeah.
punishments for those
Well,
accountable.
and
Well,
there's a big differentiation between when I say, if I ask people, like managers themselves, when I say accountability, what does that mean to you? And
yeah,
most people, when they think about it personally, think ownership, responsibility, doing what you say you're going to do, right? Acting, standing in your values, all that kind of stuff that when we're being accountable ourselves, this is what we are expecting from other people. And then I say, organizationally, as a company, what does your company want when it talks about accountability? And that's when I get the response, well, results, outcomes, right? And so the way the organization talks about accountability versus the way individuals think about accountability don't jive, because the organization, when it says people need to be held accountable, aren't asking for, we need some more ownership and responsibility in doing what you say you're going to do. What they're really asking for is, we need some discipline.
got it, got it.
Yeah.
So, like, you're so well versed in this to the point where you put it all together in a book, and it's a lifestyle for you. When we talk about the name of your book, I believe is Own Up, right? And
Yep.
accountability without the drama. Did I capture that correctly?
Yes, you
Right?
did.
And when you talk about, I love that, because when you talk about like succinct, like straight up, what the hell is drama-free accountability? What is it?
Drama free. Well, so when you think about what the drama is, the drama around accountability is all of the emotional energy that goes into it. The this makes me uncomfortable, I'm frustrated, I'm disappointed, I'm angry, if I've got that going on. I feel uncomfortable about having to talk to someone because I feel like I'm coming in to do discipline, right? Maybe there's this big long history, I'm finally having to have a conversation I should have had 2 months ago, right? There's all this stuff that surrounds it, and that's what the drama is. And when you're focused on all the negativity and you're focused on all the emotional energy, you're not learning, you're not open to having, right? So you've shut down, you've
Mm,
effectively, because you're in that place of blaming and shaming and all that kind of stuff, you're shutting down your learning, which means you're not open to listen. And so when you do it drama free accountability, because you're not working from a punitive mindset, you're actually working from a clarity place, that creating space to get clear is a much more inviting space, which takes the focus off the drama, which takes the focus into the learning and the understanding instead. So when we say drama free, really it's kind of putting down all the baggage that we tend to carry around our experiences around it, and our the way we approach it, and doing it differently.
I think I get it, and I want to make sure that we leave our audience like this is going to be etched in their brains forever. So can I poke at you a little bit to say,
Yep.
give me an example. Give me an example.
So a lot of times what people experience as accountability is a conversation around knowing, dictating, and criticizing. Here's what I know you screwed up. Here's
Ah,
what I need you to go do to fix it. And we expect the other person to go, yes, boss. And that is what we experience as accountability. But if accountability is around ownership, at what point in that conversation is their ownership? Because I'm just saying yes, boss, to end the conversation. I learned nothing, I changed nothing, I just get it. Got it. I got my hand slapped, got in trouble. Got it. I might learn not to do that again, but that doesn't mean I'm taking ownership and responsibility for the result I delivered, the impact it had, what I'm going to do differently, and an effort going forward to do that. And so when you actually have accountability, you have accountability in an arc. And an arc is starts with the individual, their choices and their outcomes, the individual and their solution, right? I not only have to own how I screwed up, I got to own what I'm going to do to fix that. What is the solution
Mm.
for me to avoid that in the future, to and what is the change I'm willing to make? And I've got to own all of that, because that's what accountability is, that's what ownership is, and that's what the learning and improvement drives. And clear is kind. And when we engage in accountability, it's an act of kindness, not only for ourselves, because we start to understand what's important to us as leaders and managers, and they're clear on what that is for them, and then they can take that as an opportunity to learn and change and improve, instead of be diminished, feel bad, feel guilty, and punished.
Okay, Jennifer. This is crazy, ridiculous. This is amazing. Except I want to challenge something a little bit here, and let's have a great dialogue about this. What if in that scenario where you're talking about, okay, so something happens, I screwed up, okay, Jonathan, I know I screwed up. Um, what if I don't have the self awareness or the knowledge to know how I want to fix that screw up? And easy, like it's great where you say, hey, Jonathan, I want you to own sort of own the screw up and then own the solution. What if I don't know the solution? Or, a defense mechanism for me is to just sort of hide out and not know the solution. So what? Now what?
Well, right. So part of what I teach you in the book is to analyze the context of the behavior, right? Because all behavior is driven by the context in which somebody's working. And so there's a framework in there to help you understand at what point does a person make a choice that actually delivers this result. So if you screwed up and say, we can talk about simple stuff, getting to work on time, habitual tardy,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
I'm always late, right? So what I want to understand is when you are late, have you been, so is it a behavior issue? Do you have a self-destructive behavior? Which means, it's not good for you and it's got a negative impact. You do it all the time, right? Those are indicators of a self-destructive behavior, right? Habitual tardiness. Is it a skill problem? Chances are not, based on what we're talking about. You know how to work an alarm clock. You know how to drive your car. You know what time the
Yeah.
office
Yeah.
opens. So not necessarily a skill problem, or isn't it an attitude problem? Right? You've shown up before. You've got a history of being on time, and suddenly you're just not. Right? What's going on for you that suddenly being here on time isn't important to you anymore? It doesn't. So when I start to analyze for myself, is this a self-destructive behavior, right? Is this a behavioral issue, or is this what I would say is either an attitude problem that says, I know you can be here on time, you're just choosing not to be? It helps me frame the conversation so that when we have the conversation, I'm going to ask the right questions in the right way. So if, for example, I believe it's an attitude problem, I'm going to say, I want to talk to you. As you know, the expectation is that we're here at 8 o'clock to start work. I'm concerned because you consistently choose to show up 20 to 30 minutes late. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. Wow.
And then I'm going to
Wow.
listen for how you respond. And do you own that or do you not own that? Ownership sounds like you're absolutely 100% right. I'm late 9 times out of 10. And then I'm going to say, what do you want to do to address that? Because I want you to own the solution. I'm not going to say, what are you doing with your alarm clock? And why aren't you getting up 30 minutes earlier? Or, maybe you've got issues with childcare and getting people where they need to be, or whatever that is. I'm just going to say, what do you need to do to be here on time? And you've got to come up with your own solution. So you're going to own it in the moment, and you're going to own the solution.
Beautiful. I got it. And no, I like really realizing it because at no point there, are you being a jerk and saying, Jonathan, what the hell's your problem? You're never on time anymore, right?
Right.
In fact, it's a tremendously different approach, right? And you've
Well,
also addressed like uh, 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 um, there are some folks out there who might say, well, if accountability is sort of looking in the mirror and taking accountability holistically first, well, then I'm going to be too soft. Well, no, Jen, you just described it's the exact opposite. It's the exact opposite.
yeah.
So thank you for that.
Yeah. It's not about hard or soft. It's about clear, unclear. And when
Clear
I'm
versus
really
yeah.
clear on what it is for me, look, the expectation is that you're here at 8 and it's non-negotiable. And I'm concerned because you maybe chose to not do that. And when I say talk to me about that, what I do is I invite you into a conversation. And I think part of the issue that people struggle with is they want to jump to the answer. Here's what you need to do. Don't be late. that doesn't that doesn't help them see the decision making, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Like, so what is it? I don't want to lead you in a direction, and you've been doing this a long time. What is it, in your opinion, that affords people the thought process to want to jump right to the conclusion?
I don't got time for this.
Right.
Because
I don't
I'm
get time.
I'm and the hard thing is when you come in to hold somebody accountable, and this is the one of the questions that you had given me is what's one of the biggest myths around accountability. And one of the biggest myths is that you can force people to be accountable. You cannot. Accountability is taken, and you cannot
Tell
force
us
it.
about that. Oh my gosh, take us down that pathway.
Well,
Tell us.
because if I'm going to try and overpower you, I'm not going to get ownership. I'm going to get malicious compliance. And that's where I come in with the punitive mindset. And I come in with overpowering, and I come in with position and power over. I'm your boss. This is what it is. Do it.
Yeah.
And you're gonna get my least best effort.
Yeah.
And so that's I think what some people experience is that's I got no problem holding people accountable. And it's like, well, you got no problem overpowering people, is what you're really telling me. Whereas if I want this person to be on board and responsible and take ownership for their own decisions, I'm not going to come in with judgment. I'm not going to come in with answers. I'm going to come in open. Because I want to get clear, A, here's what's going on for me. Where are you on this? And you get every opportunity to tell me where you are and what you want to do. And if you're in, fantastic. And if you're not, what do you want to do to move on? Because long term, if you can't get here on time, you're not going to be fit for the team. It's not negotiable.
My
Because
gosh.
if I allow you to continue to be late, everybody else on this team is going to wonder why you get special treatment. And that's not fair to everybody else. And you don't want to be that guy.
Look, folks, the way, like, Jen, this is it, right? It's actually giving a damn about people and the people in front of you and showing up for them first, right? And being rock solid in who you are. I mean, I can vividly remember many situations in construction in my career where it's like, Jonathan, you need to take accountability for this. Okay, asshole, I'll take accountability. Is that what you want me to hear? Like, you have no idea what the hell's going on. So what happens? It's like, fuck. Oh, you want me to take accountability? All right, I'm 100% accountable. Okay, we'll go fix it. All right, I'll fix it. First of all, now I'm like 50% check. I don't give a shit. I'm going to
Yeah.
comply the way you describe. I'm going to comply just to, suffice, because this individual volleyed their unsolicited opinion. You can take accountability for this. Do you even understand the situation? It's really easy to come in and beat on our chests and say, you need to be accountable, the way the word is thrown around, until, and I love what you're doing, is you're like, opening up the ribcage and saying, all right, folks, this is what it is to be a human being.
Yeah.
Like, and you lead with questions. Here's what's going on for me. What's going on for you, Jonathan? And then you're open about it. It's like you create space. I'm leaving space for the conversation because, like, here's the ripple effect. When you don't show up on time, people are going to think that you're getting preferential treatment. How do you want me to respond to that? How would you like to deal with that? Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Is that the guy you want to be? Do you want to be the teammate everybody thinks is annoying, right? Is that who you and The interesting thing is it's very easy when we go into that self-protection, right? To blame and to be the victim. And in accountability, there are no victims. You really got to allow people this space. There's power in understanding that you have 100% control over the choices you make every day. And when we get to clarity around performance, it's always around what choice worked and what didn't, and what's a better choice. And if at the end of the day, the better choice for you is you can't be here at 8, you got to find a job that starts later. That might be the better choice for you, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's okay, folks. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Look, like, okay, so let's try to capture this in bite-sized nuggets for those that are sort of listening out there, watching out there, and they want, like, give me the 1 to 3 nuggets that I get the accountability. What is it that's going to allow me to communicate effectively, succinctly, make it land with the individuals around me? What comes to mind when we talk about, making that impact with others?
Well, so relationship first, issue second. Most of the times when we come into an accountability conversation, we're coming in with the problem, we're coming in with the issue, we're
Yeah.
coming in with the here's the screw up, right? As opposed to let's, I want to talk about this, but let's talk about how you got here, right? And so really coming in open without judgment is the hardest part to do, because you've got to go, here's what the issue is for me, right? So I have a 6-step model. Step number 1 is what's your issue? And you'd be surprised at how people can conflate for themselves what their issues are, right? I got an issue with a guy around time management because he's not answering the customer service phone calls in 24-hour period. And so I'll say,
Okay.
is your issue really time management, or is it the fact they don't have a 24-hour turnaround? Because time management's a bigger issue than not returning calls in 24 hours. So be specific. What is the issue? How are you going to table it? And then the second part is how do you come in? How do you approach it? Right? Do I have a skills problem and a behavior problem, which is all coachable, trainable, or do I have an attitude problem or some kind of a conflict around what's important or what's true? Because those are different approaches, and the issues around attitude and conflict are longer to get to ownership, longer to get to solution and corrective action and change and improvement than skills and behaviors. And so when I start to understand where this person is, I got passed over for a promotion as manager, so now I got an attitude about everything and I'm giving my least best effort.
Uh-huh.
That's going to be a longer haul to get to the right kind of performance than somebody who is just an over controller.
Go
So
on, tell me more. That's step 2. Like, okay, so 1 is what your issue.
step
2 is,
3 is when you have the conversation, bring the impacts of what's happening. So when we
oh my
talked about
gosh.
the person who was late, right? The impact of that is everybody else on your team is pissed at you. You're losing credibility
Yeah.
with your team. The impact of that is a sense of entitlement, right? So that we all think we think less of you because you feel like
Yeah.
you're entitled, right? The impact of that is whoever we're waiting on, or maybe we got to review all the information we talked about in the first 10 minutes of our meeting, and we're all annoyed at the fact we got to revisit decisions we've already made, right? There's impacts. And when you start to understand what those are, it becomes more compelling for a person to want to take ownership, because they start to understand, oh God, I didn't realize that was happening, right? So impacts are something you got to carry with you into the conversation. And then if you're going to be good at it, you got to practice, right? You got to rehearse. And I think what a lot of people do is intellectualize. Okay, here's what I'm going to go do. We're going to have this conversation. We're going to have this come to Jesus. And in your mind, you're super articulate and they're super agreeable. But when you start to actually practice it out loud and start a conversation out loud before you actually have it with the person, what that helps you understand is Are you saying the things you really need to say? Are you clear? How is that going to land with that person? And it forces you to consider how will the person respond, which means you go in more ready with how they'll possibly respond because you actually said it out loud.
Pull the handbrake here. Stop for a moment.
Okay.
Because now you've got, the antennas are up, and people are like, I got the issue, I got the approach, I've got the impact. What the hell is like practice and rehearse? What do you want me to do, Jen?
I want you to role play it with somebody on your team or write it down on paper and say it out loud.
Got it.
Because what that does is when you actually get, so accountability is contact sport. You never hold people accountable in an email because
I love that. Oh, hang on. Accountability. Say that one again. Accountability is. Tell me that
it's
again.
contact sport.
I thought
You
you said
need to
it.
be in conversation with someone. It's a conversation. It's a dialogue. It's two people talking and listening, right? It's not just feedback. It's not let me just tell you in an email how you screwed up and what you need to go do. Because in an email, there is no response.
Oh my
Emails
gosh.
are one way. Emails are information, and I might respond to your email with "got it," but you don't know how I responded because so much of our communication is nonverbal. I got your email and
This
rolled my
this,
eyes and said, "Hell no."
Yeah, right. And you're gonna read the email 12 times, and you're gonna share it with your close networks, and you're gonna right. But hang on a second. I want this to land with the rough and tough,
Yeah.
philosophies out there, and the the dominance, right, which is construction, a lot of it right now, which we're flipping the script on, but we're gonna get there, right? Where it's like, fuck, I don't have time for this accountability shit. Yeah, well, you do, because accountability is a contact sport. You want to get in there, you gotta get in there. You gotta
Well,
get
right.
in there.
Well, and leadership is a relationship, and as superintendents and supervisors, you are leading crews of people. You are leading, and the only thing leaders do is get people behind them, right? And if you want people behind you, you have to have relationships with them. And your conversations are your relationships. So if I'm only yelling at you about what I want, that's the kind of relationship we're having. If I am only texting you in all caps, that is the relationship we're having. Whereas if I create space with you to have a conversation and let's talk about the decisions you have about what time you show up on crew, we're having a different relationship.
My
And
gosh.
when you talk about turnover and retention and willingness to learn and improve, that relationship matters. So how you talk to people matters.
How you talk to people matters. There it is, folks, right? How you talk to people matters. All right, so after practice and rehearse, what's next?
After you practice and rehearse, then you do it. Then you have the conversation. Then you get in there
Uh,
and you have the conversation. And conversation is more than just one-way transmission of information, right? It's listening. It's the emotion. It's not just, do you understand what I'm telling you? It's also how does that person feel about what you're telling them, and how do they feel about you? Because that's how we think about it, right? When we recall a conversation, we don't just recall here's what we talked about.
of
We
course.
recall how we felt about what we talked about. So that's why you want to get rid of all the drama, is because if we have high emotion in that moment, we stop listening and stop learning. And that's when we go into self-protect. So you have to create space, which is why you don't come in with judgment. You start there. And people might get defensive anyway, and you got to realize when they're defensive. This is why it's the 2-day course.
Yeah, so like, for all the folks out there, how do people who believe like, oh, I think I'm pretty good with accountability? How do they know? How do they know? How do they give us some insight?
They know because they consistently get people who are willing to, there's a high degree of psychological safety. I'm willing to tell you when I screwed up, I'm willing to own that I screwed up, and I'm willing to have conversations about how I get better. That's how you know you're good at it. And I don't get to consequences. I don't get to discipline. I'm always in learning and developing. That's how you know you're good at it.
So some for the professionals out there go, well, I feel exhausted because all I'm doing is reprimanding, disciplining, and correcting.
That's because all you're doing
Trigger,
is
trigger,
knowing,
trigger.
hating, and criticizing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Or it's not me, it's them. No, sometimes it's you, folks. Sometimes it's you.
Yeah, it
And
starts
Jen,
with
you.
you. How are you doing it differently? And if you're
Yeah.
coming in with a punitive mindset, you're not coming in to listen or you're not coming in to discover. Does this person take ownership and responsibility? And what are they willing to do with that? I think as managers, you always think you have to solve the problem. You don't. You want to teach them to solve their own problems.
Yeah. And I want to pivot for a second because this is a really wonderful spot for me. Is I talk about children a lot because children resonate deep with me. And what you just said is like it's really easy for me to swoop in and solve our children's problems, right? Or I also want to equip them to solve their own problems, right?
That's
And
right.
sometimes it sucks. Sometimes it's like, oh my god, this just child's gonna get hurt, or this child's arguing, fighting with their sibling, or whatever it is going on, and you're just like, I just want to swoop in and say, shut up, and everybody fix it, and solve be the problem solver.
Yeah. Yeah.
Peel back,
And
right?
we get a little hit of dopamine when we solve a problem. It feels good to be the problem solver.
Yeah.
But when you come in with the answers and when every time somebody talks to you, what you do is provide the answers, all you're teaching them is that you have the answers and that theirs aren't good enough.
Wow.
And yeah, but that's
And
the coaching end. Yeah.
well, that's the coaching, and for the professionals out there listening and watching, they're like, yeah, that's me. I'm always giving the answers. Yeah, how well is that serving you? It's probably pretty exhausting,
Well,
right?
it is. I mean, that's, when you're at the end of the day, if every time, people darken your doorway and they show up in your office or they're sending you the emails and you spend all day putting out the fires and answering the questions, what are you really teaching them to do? You're teaching them, to come to you. And the big difference, and I think it's just a myth. I think that managers are like, God, by the time I teach somebody how to do this, I can do it myself. Well, your job is to grow your people. That is what managers do. They're responsible for the results. You're not. You're responsible for them being better problem solvers, so they can give you those results. And I think that's where managers especially get misunderstood. Well, if they screw up, that's on me. And it's like, yeah. So how are you getting them to be better at what they do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And at speed and under pressure is where it can all go sideways.
What do you mean by that?
That is when we feel we get to judge and we get to tell them what to do because we have the pressure of the time and the whatever's going on in the business, that schedule pressure or that cost pressure or that whatever it might be. That's when we feel it's okay to behave the way we typically do, which is tell people what to do and don't listen and just come in hard and heavy instead of create space. And it's counterintuitive at speed and under pressure to create space for problem solving, for learning, and for accountability. But when you do that, you think of it like a racetrack. You got to slow down in the corner to come out of the straightaway at speed. Otherwise, you roll the car. And so many times we just choose to roll the car.
And we don't take corrective action, right? And it just becomes
No,
car after
it just
car after
becomes a,
car.
yeah. We just keep rolling the car in the corner, hoping, definition
All right.
insanity.
So
Something
okay.
over and
So
over.
I think I got this, and I want to flip the script on this and lean it in a direction. So, in your opinion, advise our audience. When is it okay to direct traffic to say like this is how it has to go? This is what needs to happen. Is there a time? Is there a
Well,
place for it?
sure, there can be as long as you're not living in that because otherwise you're living in crisis all the time, right? Where
Okay.
everything's, and you've got to get firemen live in crisis, right? Where they got to direct people on what to do, when to do it, and how to do it because there's high stakes and people are going to die, right? you got to get a perspective on when those really are for you, that this is how it's going to go. And that's really more about setting an expectation than it is about being directive in this, if that makes sense. But
Yeah, so you're saying, in mission critical, catastrophic situations, as the leader there, take charge.
yeah,
For the majority of the other time, create the time and
hmm,
space, and see what shows up.
right, right. Because the more you do that, the less you're going to be in those high pressure situations. And then when you are in those high pressure situations, no one questions. There's no resentment.
Because you already demonstrated, holistically
Yeah,
your philosophies, how you operate, how you believe, what you believe in,
right.
and this is cool. Okay. I'm curious, and I want to know if there is a correlation, if at all. A large portion of your life, from what I've learned, has been ingrained in the theater industry.
Yeah, I did. I
There's so
did.
many questions. A, like, at what capacity?
Directing,
Let's start with
right?
directing. Okay.
Yeah, loved it. Really, really enjoyed it. And an interesting lesson because when you're directing a play, you're working with a script, and script is all language and conversation. And so when it's a perfect line when you think about my history of looking at line by line dialogue and creating dynamic around
Sure.
that to understanding just dialogue in general and how we communicate and like I say, your conversations are your relationships. And so my directing background has given me really interesting insight into the power of language and the power of language relative to how you build relationship and what communication is really about. And when you're good at leading and managing people, you are a good communicator, which means you think with intention around when I speak, how I do it.
It, this is a learned skill, right? It's not always that way. So for you, and I want to stay in the theater space for a moment, like, what do you learn? Was there a breaking point where, like, a switch went off for you? I don't know. Like, I'm just super curious. Is there a correlation to that shaping who you are today?
Yeah, because theater is an art of reflection, self-reflection. It's a mirror we hold up to ourselves in a social sense, right? And so the whole point of the art form is to throw a mirror up to ourselves and say, "Ooh, this is what we look like." Is that what can we take away from that, right? And that's kind of the director's role is to here's the lens I want you to look through. Here's why it's relevant right now. And all good learning and development starts with good self-reflection, right? Creating the time to self-reflect. And when you're in that moment of holding people accountable, they get a moment to self-reflect on what decisions did I make and how did that go? And how do I want to handle that? And that is the learning. That is the kicking the door open to say, how can I be better at what I am? And so there's a direct correlation relative to the idea of self-reflection and how valuable that is to people in general.
So self-reflection is a broad blanket, and I got that. And for our audience out there, like, define in your mind what self-reflection could be, what it can be, where to start, how to dig in. What do you suggest?
Well, I think knowing who you are, right? So part of your communication is your style, and we all have a specific style. And if I'm aware of what my style is, that helps me understand how I'm going to impact others. But what it also tells me is there are other styles. And so my communication gets better when I'm versatile in different styles, as opposed to this is who I am and this is how I'm going to show up. Is that's my preference. But when I'm going to come to you and I know you're a different style, my ability to flex into your style increases our chances of actually connecting and building trust and creating psychological safety, because what it says is I see you for who you are. Let me meet you where you are. And so those are efforts around connectivity. And so that self-awareness and understanding of your own style is part of that.
Wow. Again, there it is. There it is, folks. Like, you're showing up for other people. You're actually becoming part of the world. You're being curious. Your intention there, Jen, the way you talk about it, the intention there is to really connect with them first, right? Like, learn who you're
Mm-hmm.
dealing with,
Mm-hmm.
and then pivot and you know come into meet them where they are. I love what you said. Meet them where they are. If they're at half field, don't go to the end zone. Meet them at half field, right?
Right. Meet them where they are. And the idea of connection is an interesting thing because the brain science that's come out in the last few years says that we are actually more interested in being connected than we are. It's more important for us to connect than it is for us to be safe. And so when you think about
Mm.
that, even from, I mean, you're in a construction sense, there's a lot of safety interest there because you're doing a lot of high risk work, right? And that connectivity is more important than physical safety, emotional safety, like all of the safety. But to feel connected to the group, to feel part of a crew, to feel part of an organization is actually more important. And when we ignore people, we don't talk to people, we don't address things in a timely manner, what we're essentially doing is ignoring people, which is why you get people who leave, right? Why you get turnover and why
Mm.
people leave managers because those people aren't good at creating connection.
My gosh, there is so much more. Um, Jen, like, okay, okay, how, you have all this knowledge? How does Own Up? How does the book come into play?
So it's Own Up is the result of the book. We've been doing a program on how to communicate and hold people accountable and manage performance for 30 some odd years. And during the pandemic was finally the point where I was like, yeah, we should put that in the book and put that out. And so that's what I did. And so trying to help people have something to get a wider audience in terms of how to do this because I think it's an unfortunate thing that we've conflated accountability with punishment because it's not. And we
Yeah.
really need to shift our mindsets back. And so I'm on a campaign to get accountability back into a place where it's not something we're afraid to do, we're uncomfortable with, and we think is difficult because it's not. It's an act of clarity and it's so foundational for organizations and relationships to do
You
it
know
well.
that's huge, right? Accountability is an act of clarity, and that's what it is, right? And it's been. I'm going to use this word with my cognitive biases in play. That it's been misconstrued as it's that somebody needs to be accountable. Oh, bullshit. Like, accountability is an act of clarity. Seek to understand first, right? Seek to learn, and then pivot from there.
Right.
I love this, and for all the folks out there, not to worry. Like, um, Jen's credentials, everything will be in the show notes for you. The book, the link's gonna be there, guys. Like, it's I want more. I want more of you, Jen. There's a whole bunch of people out there. Like, you're sharing great messages to the world. You're illuminating what's possible when you actually care about people. Like, this is leadership, folks. This is breaking the barriers of the way it's always been. This is really flipping the script on everything that you think you thought you knew. So
Yeah.
thanks, Jen. Thanks for
You're
for
welcome.
for taking us
Yeah.
down
Thank
this road.
you. Thanks for having the
Okay, so
conversation.
crazy ridiculous thought. Here it is. Airplane. Airplane flying through the sky. It's got one of those wavy banners on the back. It's got a message there. What's one thought, one message, something you want to leave to the world? It's in the banner behind the airplane. What's it say?
Ugh. It says create space. Create space for dialogue, create space for connection.
Create space for I love that. I'm writing that one down. Create space for connection. You have certainly uh, done that for me today. You've done that for our audience. Thank you. Like, this is it, folks. Connection is the fundamental underpinning of everything else.
It is. It is.
Jen, thank you. Leave us with best way to get in touch with you.
Best way to get in touch with me, own-up.com is the website. Jen.long at own-up.com is how to email me. And I'd love to hear from you. So don't be afraid to connect.
It's all going to be there, folks. And if you didn't get the theme there, it's own up. Start with you, right? Look in the mirror.
That's right.
Accountability is seeking clarity of yourself, seeking clarity of others, and digging in. Jen, this has been a true honor, a pleasure. Thank you tremendously for making time out of your day to be here.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's been really fun talking to you.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
I got it.